The aftermath of another aerial attack by Syrian government forces on rebel-held areas near Aleppo this week. Dozens were killed, observers say. Rescue workers dig and pull out citizens trapped under the rubble of collapsed buildings. Dust and smoke fill the streets where once a market thrived. This is unverified footage of a neighborhood in what is Syria's largest city. After 4.5 years of war, thousands of refugees are now fleeing for the safer lands of northern Europe. Meanwhile, US and Russian defense chiefs met earlier this week for talks on the conflict. Big divides remain. Russia supports President al-Assad, while the West sees him as the main culprit of Syria's devastating conflict. Washington's stance remains clear.
We would warn them against doubling down on their support for the Assad regime. That's a losing bet. It's a losing bet for Russia.
But both superpowers agree on destroying terrorist group the Islamic State, the main fighting force opposing Assad. The question is that threat enough to unite the Cold War foes? And will the Kremlin attempt to use Ukraine as a trade-off? For example, if Washington eases sanctions on Russia over its aggression in Ukraine, Moscow could, in return, agree to help the US fight Islamic State. That was the argument used by Andrew Foxall, director of the Russian Studies Center at the Henry Jackson Society. He was quoted by the International Business Times as saying, "I think Putin and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will be making the point that if Russia helps the West on IS, they will expect something in return. That may be a drawdown of sanctions or a non-renewal of sanctions. It may be passive recognition of Russia's sovereignty over Crimea. It may be passive recognition of Russian control over the Donbass. But I do think Ukraine is the elephant in the room." The Kremlin's military build-up in Syria is evident. These satellite images appear to show large amounts of hardware, among it artillery and attack helicopter support. These photos were taken by the US-based geopolitical intelligence and advisor firm Stratfor. US officials also say fighter jets and as many as 500 Russian naval infantry forces have been deployed. Putin and Obama are set to attend the UN General Assembly next week. Only then will we see if both the US and Russia will cooperate to fight Islamic State. And if they do, the question is, what will that mean for the West's support for Ukraine's fight against Russian aggression?